Welcome to the mdlove podcast, where truth takes a stance, celebrating Michael with facts that enhance. Ready? Let's dance!
Sometimes I wonder if the world ever really saw Michael Jackson for who he truly was. Not the headlines, not the spectacle, but the human being underneath it all. In this episode, I want to step away from the noise and talk about Michael. Not the superstar, but the man. The one who laughed, cried, loved deeply, and longed to be understood. This is about humanizing Michael Jackson. We know the music, we know the dance moves, we know the rumors, but do we know him? The real Michael Jackson has been hidden behind myths, media narratives, and misunderstandings for decades. Today I want to bring the conversation back to what matters, his humanity. What does it mean to be human when the whole world sees you as something else? For Michael Jackson, being human wasn't easy. He was either defied or demonized, rarely just seen as a person. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the parts of Michael that often get overlooked. His pain, his joy, his fears, and his heart. In today's episode, I want to step away from the noise. I want to talk about the man who felt deeply, who longed for connection, who gave everything to his art while carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. This is not about defending him. This is not about idolizing him. This is about humanizing him. Because before he was the king of pop, before he was a global icon, he was a person. And that's where we begin. When I say humanizing Michael, I mean going beyond the image the media sold us. Beyond the moonwalk, the glitter, and the controversy. I mean looking at his heart, the one that broke, loved, struggled, and kept going despite it all. Today I'm going to mention his loneliness and desire for real friendship, the way he dealt with pain, physical and emotional, his playful, childlike spirit, his deep love for people, animals, and the planet, and the pressure of being perfect in a world that refused to let him be flawed. I'm also going to touch on why it's so dangerous and honestly dehumanizing to only talk about him as a myth, a meme, or a case file. Michael wasn't just a pop star. He was a son, a brother, a father, a friend, and a human being who had to survive in a world that often refused to see his soul. Let's start with something that people rarely want to talk about. How lonely Michael Jackson really was. Despite being surrounded by millions of fans, Michael often spoke about feeling isolated. He said it in interviews, he wrote it in his journals, and you can even hear it in his music. Songs like Stranger in Moscow, Leave Me Alone, and Privacy were cries for help, not just catchy melodies. He was telling us how it felt to be watched constantly, misunderstood, and stripped of his privacy. Michael wasn't just dealing with fame. He was dealing with the trauma of not having a normal childhood, not being able to trust the people around him, and constantly being judged, no matter what he did. And that breaks my heart. Because at the end of the day, he just wanted someone to love him for who he really was. Not Michael Jackson, the icon, but Michael, the person. Another part of humanizing Michael Jackson is understanding how much pain he was in. And I'm not just talking about emotional pain. Michael suffered from lupus and vitiligo, two very serious and real autoimmune diseases that affected his skin and caused chronic pain. The media mocked him endlessly for this. They said he was bleaching his skin to be white, when in truth, his skin was literally changing color because of illness. Can you imagine what it must feel like to be sick and instead of receiving compassion, you become the punchline of every late night joke? And then there's the emotional pain, the trauma from childhood, being pushed to perform, constantly rehearsing, never having a real sense of freedom. The pressure to always be perfect, the betrayal by people he trusted, even family, the false accusations, the courtrooms, the media takedowns. Michael carried all of that and still showed up to give us music that healed the world. That's not just resilience, that's human strength. One of the things that made Michael Jackson so special and also so misunderstood was his childlike spirit. He never had a real childhood, that's a fact. From the age of 5, he was in studios and on stages, performing to survive. So later in life, he tried to reclaim what was stolen from him. He loved Disneyland, he loved cartoons, magic, and the innocence of play. He had a deep connection with children, not in the way tabloids twisted it, but in a pure spiritual sense. He saw childhood as sacred. People made fun of him for that. They called him Wacko Jacko. They said he was weird. But maybe, just maybe, he was trying to heal. Maybe the joy he gave us came from a place of trying to fill the joy he never had. Michael once said, "When I see children, I see the face of God." That's not weird. That's beautiful. Another thing people miss when they talk about Michael is how deeply he cared about the world. He wasn't just thinking about peace and love because it sounded nice. He meant it. He donated millions to charity, more than any other pop star in history. He visited sick children in hospitals around the world and often without any cameras or press. He was an environmentalist before it was trendy. Earth Song wasn't just a performance, it was a protest. He was grieving the planet. And the way he loved animals, the way he surrounded himself with nature, it all points back to someone who saw the world not as a machine, but as something sacred and alive. That level of empathy, that desire to heal the world, is a reflection of someone deeply human. And then there is the pressure. Michael couldn't mess up. He couldn't age. He couldn't gain weight. He couldn't even rest. He was expected to be a superhuman, flawless, unshakable, godlike. But no one can live like that. He was working from childhood until the end of The King of Pop. And every time he tried to set boundaries, take a break, or just be himself, the world criticized him for it. The masks, the privacy, the walls he built, they weren't about being strange. They were about protection. Michael was a sensitive soul in a brutal world, and for too long, we forgot that fame doesn't erase humanity. It magnifies the wounds. So today I wanted to remind you, and maybe myself too, that Michael wasn't just a legend. He was a human being. A man who gave so much of himself to the world, that there was nothing left for him. If we truly love Michael, if we truly want to honor his legacy, we have to remember all of him. Not just the performer, not just the headlines, but the heart, the spirit, the person. So the next time you listen to his music, look a little deeper. Listen for the soul behind the song, the human behind the magic. Hi everyone, how are you? This is mdlove. I hope you enjoyed this scripted part of the podcast. I just wanted to really kind of send my message. I really wanted to share how I really feel about this topic, humanizing Michael Jackson. When I saw a tweet about this thing that I've been talking about for years, I've been saying, if people will get to know the real Michael, then they will see that what the media did was completely, they just told us this false story about a man that never existed. So what I'm trying to do for years and years now is share who Michael really is, so you will see that there's no way that the character the media created had ever existed. So that gave me the idea of having a topic every week that we can focus on, talk about, all of us together, not just me talking to my phone and then waiting for your comments, but all of us as a community, as moonwalkers, we can talk about what's really important about Michael, like this topic, humanizing Michael Jackson. I still see people who if they love him, they will talk about his performers, they think about him as a god, as an angel, and I think it's so important to remind people that in spite of everything he accomplished, he is still a human being. And I think that's even more impressive, don't you? Being only a human being to accomplish what he accomplished is unbelievable, right? Because people think that he could only accomplish all those things, being the king of pop, being the most famous person in the world. He could only do that if he is like a god or, something out of this world. He is very special, I agree. But he is a special human being, okay? He is not out of this world. He is from this world, and in spite of being from this world, like the rest of us, he accomplished something amazing. And I'm glad we talked about this topic this week. And I just wanted to say thank you guys for participating all week, answering the polls, answering my questions, on the posts. And I wanted to wish you a great weekend. And I will talk to you next week. And I will reveal next week's topic tomorrow in a post. So stay tuned and keep love alive and keep Michaeling. And I will talk to you soon.